thank you all who are still joining us. And so we're going to get started.
What
My name
is why we're here. So there's a bit of a crossover with our live this evening with Karen Phillips. She's going to be doing a live session on proposal writing with us. So she's actually the moderator for this evening, but we're happy to have everyone here. She'll take over from here.
Yes, thank you so much, Chelsea, for starting the stage. And so for those who don't know, I am Karen Phillips, I'm Kindness Consultant, and my guest tonight is Chelsea Foster from Girls of a Feather, which was founded in 2014, which works on girls' rights and children protection in St. Lucia. She has 10 years plus experience with mobilizing resources, working with developmental donors such as Global Fund for Women, IREX, Equality Fund of Canada, and UN Women. So thank you so much for Chelsea for being here and helping me host conversation.
No problem. Thanks for inviting me, and I'm looking forward to this evening's discussion.
Great. So what we're going to do, we're just going to do a quick get to know one another, and so that our audience can also know who we are. We're just two Caribbean feminists who met once in person, but yet always mingling in the same group, right? So would you rather spend a month on vacation in Europe or Africa?
Okay, so I thought about this question a lot, and I actually don't have like a top list of places I want to go. I just enjoy traveling, so I just enjoy being out of the country anyway. So I actually would like to pick both. I don't mind traveling to Europe, and because Africa doesn't really get that much exposure, we're now getting to see the real Africa. I think I would probably prioritize there over Europe, just because I think like accessibility and the ease of traveling. So I think I would prioritize Africa, but I would love to go to both. So I can't choose a vacation spot between the two.
I am strong. I could be like, I am going to South Africa. I'm going to spend at least 2 weeks there, and then maybe the others. But the history, the culture, the connection. Right now is the season of emancipation, and we have a pilgrimage coming over to Barbados to explore the archives and all of these stuff. And I'm like, I want to be on pilgrimage to go back to Africa to explore the roots. So yeah, definitely choosing Africa each time over Europe. And so if you follow my channel, you know that I love dogs. But for you, are you dogs or cats?
I'm definitely not an animal lover either. Anybody who knows me know I've had hundreds of dogs though, growing up. But I have to choose them over cats just simply because I just don't find cats very friendly. I don't know when cats are happy. I really cannot tell the emotions of that animal at all. So I would go with dogs any day.
Oh, okay. That's fair. That's good. All right. And then if we go to the work that we do, would you prefer to allocate funding towards housing or mental health initiatives?
I would definitely hands down go with mental health initiatives. Just because the funding for that is so rare and the need for it is very high in St. Lucia at least, and even in the Caribbean. So anytime there's any funding for anything mental health related, I would pick that over anything, for sure.
Okay. I think the last month, Sandrina talked about booty, and I think I want both. Like, I don't think I'll be able to choose because your mental health will suffer if you don't have a place to lie down and to know that you're safe and sick. So I feel like you can't address one without the other.
That's true. Fair.
Yeah. So I'll be talking about resource mobilization, and a simple definition of resource mobilization is the process of securing resources in a timely and cost-effective manner using different strategies to implement an organization predetermined goals. What are your thoughts on that?
Resource mobilization for me, I didn't think it was a priority starting an organization, but interestingly enough, it was one of the first set of skills that I learned when I got into this space. Very, very first set of skills, first set of workshops I participated in. And I think it's because the people in this sector know how important and critical it is to setting the foundation and the sustainability of starting a nonprofit organization, a social enterprise, anything in the social sector. You need resources. You're in the sector of begging. So knowing and the skills to, whether it's financial, in kind, all sorts of resources that you need for your organization, you need to know who to go to and how to get it. So yeah, I think definitely one of the main areas for discussion within this sector. So very much happy to go into a little bit more depth with you this evening.
I definitely want to challenge you with that. We're in the sector of begging because I do find we end up with unequal. We look at ourselves like if we have unequal partnerships, but we're all bringing equal value to the table. We're just bringing different stuff. So even though yes, a nonprofit may be requesting resources, you
There's
need us
mutual.
to help you fulfill your mandate as well. So
Very
I'm
true.
going to challenge you on that mindset of resource mobilization.
But
So
you
you mentioned that.
both know how to be very strategic in making those requests, I would say, for sure.
Right. And you mentioned different types of requests. So you mentioned the fundraisers, the social enterprise, and we're going to talk a bit about the proposals, right? So proposal writing is a key part because even if we were private sector, we would have to write proposals to get clients. And in this sector, we are writing to get partners who will either donate funds, financial resources, or work with us providing in-kind or other sorts of resources. So a well-written proposal is the difference between securing funding or not, because this most times is the first interaction that a donor may have with your organization, the first time they're reading about it. And there are like 5 key tips that I think we should keep in mind and like use as guiding points when writing proposals and this conversation. And one of the key ones is read the guidelines carefully. I think that often we get excited when we see opportunities and persons run towards the opportunities, but they don't pause to read to see if there's alignment with the mission of the donor organization and their own as well. Or we just get super excited and not realize when the deadline is, and then we're rushing to see if we can meet the deadline. So it's important to stop and read the guidelines carefully before deciding if you wish to apply. Secondly, tell a compelling story. So well, I don't think we've done reverse. You haven't been in one of my workshops, but I love to say that the project rationale is the love story. This is where you woo the donor. So it's not just about listing facts and figures, but also trying to illustrate how the impact of your project what would be the impact of your project on your beneficiaries. You're trying to ensure that they are drawn in to be like, yes, I need to see where the story ends. This is something that is bothering persons in society. This is a social issue that needs to be addressed. And then thirdly, focusing on results, understanding what is a project output, what is a project outcome. And I know we get confused by those words, but we don't. It's not just about putting them down, but also explaining how you will achieve these outcomes and how you will have a positive impact on the beneficiaries that you're representing. And then what is your expertise? How do you know that you have this knowledge? How do you know that you're able to implement these projects successfully? So how do you demonstrate your connection to the beneficiaries? And then last but not least is proofread and edit. Oh my gosh. This is something I think all humans struggle with, because when you write something, you know what you think you're writing, but then you're not necessarily reading what's on the paper. And this is why it's so important
You're not
to stop.
and you have a deadline.
Yeah, especially when you're under those nerves. Yeah, that is so right. So right. So what are your thoughts? Do you think these are like good guidelines, good tips for proposal writing?
I actually think they're all equally important, but I want to highlight especially the guidelines component.
Mhm.
For me, I get sent, or the organization gets sent, a lot of opportunities, and people typically don't really go through that fine print. And that's the first area I go in terms of your eligibility. Do
Mhm.
you the criteria? Is it a funding opportunity for your country? Does it match the values of the organization that's proposing the funding, etc.? So the guidelines are like one of the first things that I read anytime I get sent a proposal. Um, so definitely pay attention to that. The eligibility is another one. Make sure you meet that criteria and make sure that your story is very relevant to the work that you do. You can tell a compelling story for any sort of issue, but just make sure that it's relevant to what the donors are requesting. And for the point that you made about results, ensure that the results that you have are smart. So they're specific,
Mhm.
measurable, they're attainable, they're done in a timely manner. So making sure that they're realistic. You don't want to present a proposal that is trying to save the world in a year. So that's something I think you really have to pay attention to. And I think sometimes we oversee that, when we write proposals. So yes, we want to do a lot, but in this time frame, is that something you do? And even on the donors end, sometimes I feel like they ask sometimes for a lot, but you kind of have to work, hand in hand with the requests. So just make sure that they're realistic goals that you're trying to set for yourself and that you can actually achieve them. Does your organization have the capacity to do those things that you propose?
Mhm.
Because the worst thing you want is you prepare a proposal that you really cannot even implement. So these are
That's so true.
yeah, so I think the points that you made are on point, and definitely, if you're new to the sector, if you're new to resource mobilization, just pay close attention to those key areas for sure.
And I wanted to go back to another thing that you said about making sure that they're realistic. So often persons want to do construction and they want to bring in items. We live in the Caribbean. We know the custom situation. We know that we have to outsource most of our things and bring it in. You need to ensure that not even trying to save the world, just ensure that you know that you could bring in this item and have it delivered to you, pass through customs and everything else within the project time frame.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah, and it's
even being
mhm.
familiar with what you're doing, have you done construction before? Do you know, like, in your proposal, maybe you've never done it, but at least you have the expertise to say, well, maybe another donor may co-finance covering those custom costs, or um, just really making a case for yourself to know that you may not have all the funding to do it, but you've thought through this strategically. Um, and yes, you can do it because you can possibly build whatever in the amount of time that the donors are requesting. But have you done your research? Have you done your homework to know all of that? The amount of time it takes and those import costs, etc. So that's a really good point.
Yes, yes. Great. And so in your experience, because you've written proposals for various donors, which means that there's various guidelines. How do you tailor your proposals to meet the needs of your specific donors?
So it's not a cheat sheet, but you can use it as a cheat sheet. But I always like to do a little bit of research on what the donors have funded previously. So you get
Mhm.
a sense of the nature of the organizations, whether they're small, whether they're large. Um, you can see what they prioritize, what they want to fund, and the types of results that they like to see. So I do a little bit of homework both on the organizations that have received funding from some donors and on the donors themselves. So some of them already put that up on their websites. This is what we've done, this is the work that we do, this is who we fund. So that's a little cheat sheet there. And also just understand your donors, what their values are. For me, I work in, I guess, feminism and women's and girls' rights. So you know exactly the type of work that you should be doing. So for me, it's just really understanding who they are, the types of organizations that they're looking for, and just making a good case to say, well, we match those values and we do similar work.
Yes, I was saying the last thing I heard was that you will be searching the donors to ensure that they fund projects that you would be aligned with.
Right.
So I was saying after you do your research, what's your next step?
We always have a plan in place. So usually I meet up with the team. We brainstorm together. So that's one of the critical things that we do. And we really begin that process of seeing, how can we bring those ideas into action. Sometimes I even go the extra mile of maybe reaching out to some persons who have already received, support. I kind of ask them, what are they looking for? How is the process? Recommendations, things like that. And we just get the ball rolling from there.
Okay, so it's a lot of research to understand who the donor is before you write for the donor. And would you say that the material that you write, would it vary based on donor? As in, would you say that some donors like more facts while some donors like more feelings?
Um, I think it really depends because some applications are easier than others. Some of them focus, you touched on one element, like they want to hear stories. They want to know exactly what you're doing, what your beneficiaries, who your beneficiaries are, how involved they are. Some of them are more focused on that quantitative data. So I think it really depends on what they're requesting in the application. So really, really going through that application in detail, being very detail oriented, read through that application multiple times before you begin filling it out. So I think it really just depends on your application process can really tell what they're looking for. And they sometimes mention, please, ensure that this is included. I'm doing an application right now, and they would tell you, we want to see some of the analysis that has been done, etc. So if they give you those little hints, make sure you take it and run with it. So that's my definite recommendation.
Okay, that's good. So you talked about showing the research. You said they wanted to see the analysis. So that's a bit of beneficiary assessment, a bit of research within not only about the donor, but about the topic. So could you walk me through how would you ensure that you show that you are connected to your beneficiaries, and like who do you use so that this is a social issue that needs to be addressed?
So if you're a first-time proposal writer or a first-time startup, you definitely want to have a little bit of evidence in terms of the work that you do. So I'll give you an example. Before we even got into the process of proposal writing, we had done a little bit of community work prior to that. So needing those financial resources, just having small convenings to say, we've worked in this sector, we've consulted with these people, they know us, we know them, is a good place to start. So you don't want to work outside an area that you're not focused on. Sorry, you don't want to present a proposal in an area outside of where you focus on.
Okay.
So make sure that either you have partners, whether you've worked on a project, or those are your direct beneficiaries. So just always showing proof that you've done the work is the easiest route to go, whether directly or indirectly. But if you don't have experience, I think partnership is a great way to go. So for instance, maybe I don't work with a certain community, but the work that you want to do. It takes nothing out of you to reach out to those organizations and say, hey, I think this is a great opportunity. our work is kind of aligned. We are all women's organizations. I don't do this type of work, but I think, as you mentioned earlier, there's always this mutual exchange. There's always some common ground in the work that we do. So teaming up is always something that can benefit you if maybe you don't have the sector, but you don't want to exploit people for the purpose of getting money. So that's the other thing. Just because there's an opportunity, you want to be fair, and that's another critical thing. You want to have some level of integrity, of course, with this type of work. So
you dropped a lot of gems there. So let's see if we could dig a little deeper on those gems. So the first thing you said is that when you first started off, you used to go and have like these consultations, these open airs engagement with your potential beneficiaries.
yes,
And you use that to show that you were connected to the beneficiary that you wanted to represent, right? So say like if we wanted to do a project and we're not sure, or we have these open airs, what kind of questions do we ask them to ensure or that the project is tailored to what they need and not what we think they need?
questions that I would ask the beneficiaries.
Yeah.
Just really straightforward questions in terms of what would they like to see. You could even present your proposal ideas and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Even at this stage, when I'm meeting with my team, before I always the proposal, we have a discussion. I mentioned, brainstorming. What do you think this will benefit you? What can we change? What would you like to see? Sometimes, a lot of persons, they don't even get asked these types of questions, so they may not even realize that it's something that they can have and they can get access to. But I will say for sure that if you're presenting an idea, it will give them a sense that they have that expectation that it's going to happen. So very cautious of that.
Right.
Up with people, let them know the basis of why you're asking them that nothing is guaranteed, of course, but there's potential to expand your project, and you want them to be included, you want it to be participatory, and their contribution will definitely be considered in the implementation phase.
So you spend a lot of time in the prep week, which is what we touched on last month's live as well. We talked about the importance of the prep week. So we have the prep week of doing our research of who the donors are, doing our research of what would the beneficiaries need or how we could best serve our beneficiaries, talking to them straightforward, but also managing their expectations.
Right.
That this is just informal research and we don't have the funding as yet, but this is what we would like to do. And then you talked about partnering. And I've had persons tell me that they don't want to partner because if they partner, that's less money for them. But you don't sound like if you have that approach to it. So let me hear, what is your philosophy about partnering with other organizations?
I don't think it's ever an issue about money. I think it's really very much shared goals. So although thus far we haven't done direct collaboration yet with organizations on projects, but they're always involved in some way. So I think, like you mentioned earlier, there's always the question of what can I gain from this? How can you help me while I'm helping you? I think that's the approach you always have to take. So I think it's just a matter of saying, I think you can benefit from this as well. So I don't think I've ever thought about less financing for us. So yeah.
And I know that donors like that's good about think about making sure that there's synergy and making sure that, as you said, not are you taking advantage of their information, but having an equal sharing of information. And what I was going to say is that I know that donors like to see collaboration. We are a small but mighty region, and therefore there tends to be a lot of cross focus for our NGOs, and sometimes it would be good like if they could work together, and that way they could expand the impact than working in silos. So I do think I agree with your point of working with others, even if it's not a direct, as in you're bidding together for one grant, but at least working together to understand the needs and understand how to expand your reach and your impact.
But I will say this,
Mhm.
to piggyback off of what you said, I think partnerships can also be difficult. And just from a different perspective, um, I'm a small organization, and sometimes I worked on a project. For example, I've worked on a project in 2022, and that project was so demanding. I really couldn't even do anything for our organization outside of that project. That was a donor funded project because we were so small. So sometimes when we turn away opportunities, it's not because we don't want to, but a lot of the times we don't even have the capacity. So I think even in the long run, I think for us as well, when I think of partnerships, I think it's great to maybe approach it very early on to say, meet with whoever, like organizations within your sector to say, hey, maybe let's use the example of GBV.
Mhm.
I think one of our
Being gender-based violence, sorry, for those who don't
gender-based
know.
violence,
Yeah.
um, let us look at an opportunity in the future, because right now we know within this next year we're working on such and such, but we want the opportunity to maximize on our resources, to reach a greater audience, to leverage off of each other's skill sets. So I think as a small organization, one of the things that you can do is not just hop on an opportunity because it's there in a month from now, but reach out to organizations and say, hey, within 6 months, 8 months, etc., we want to possibly collaborate on something, so we can start thinking of opportunities and even block off space within our calendars, etc.,
Mhm.
some work together. So I think that's an area, because working in silos sometimes is not technically something we do intentionally. We are all trying to work on with our small capacity and small
Mhm.
resources, just on the things that we want to prioritize. So sometimes it's not our fault working.
I understand that as well, because when you said that at the beginning, when you said you were reading the guidelines to understand if you have the capacity to be a partner with a donor, and it's the same way when that reading those guidelines, if you say, okay, this year we probably may not be able to make X donor X deadline, but next year we know that the funding cycle is going to come out every April.
Right.
Maybe we could partner with another organization to ensure that we have time to build the proposal and put things in place so that we could submit for April. Maybe that could be a solution. And I understand that partnerships aren't always easy,
Yeah,
but but we could see the benefits of it within our small but mighty region.
I agree
Yeah.
for sure.
So what would you say one of your biggest lessons learned in proposal writing?
The biggest lesson has been have a backup plan for for those rejections. And when you think something is going to come through, it may not come through. So always have a backup plan. Um, Another one is definitely time management. I'm working on that. We are all working on meeting those deadlines, but it really helps to have that extra time to maybe share with other people, to proofread and edit, to make those last minute changes. So just make sure you're not rushing, especially when it's those very tedious applications that require a lot of documents
Mhm.
to be uploaded, etc. So time management is key. And the last one is just practice. The first time can be very intimidating. I know there's one proposal where I really didn't think that I our organization fit the criteria, and all it took was somebody to say, just do the application. So the more practice you get, you realize it's almost like, these CXC past papers you do, and you're like, okay, there's a lot of repetition here. This is the same thing. The structure is typically the same, the skeleton on what they're requesting. So once you have an idea of really how to frame those proposals, you have an idea of what you want to do, that really helps. So the more practice, the easier it is to at least get the gist of the writing part of it.
All right. So once again, you just dropped so many things there, and I'm like, oh, I should be taking notes. Right. So we talked about time management. Do you have any time management tools? Do you use Trello? Do you use Notion? Or do you just use Excel to map your time?
I use my brain. Most of the I know there's an app for everything, but honestly, trying to manage a lot of these tools can even be more stressful. So for
Yeah.
me, I know the pace and I know the time frame, etc. But for someone who is juggling more than me, tools would probably be helpful. So the suggestions that you made were great. But tools would actually be helpful for tracking in terms of different deadlines. So if you know that you familiar with donor cycles and you know that's actually started, I know in October and this is this. I know a request for proposals is going to come out. I know I need to allocate this amount of time, look out for that, and begin fleshing out ideas, etc. So, in that way, yes, uh, deadlines for sure can be helpful. But usually, I kind of work at my own pace. I know the amount of time it'll take, etc. Yeah.
Okay. Do you use, so I know I just asked about some other software, but do you use any tools to help with your writing? So like we're in the age of AI, artificial intelligence, and we have Google Gemini, we have ChatGPT, we have Grammarly, Canva, as well as trying to write for us as well, Magic Design. Do you use any of those to help you develop ideas around your proposals?
Not so much ideas, but I think technical writing can be very exhausting. So sometimes maybe the structure of how to maybe phrase certain things, yes, AI is helpful. But for ideas, typically, and that's one of the recommendations I'll make at the end is, make sure that you know exactly what you want to achieve, because I can only tell you so much, but you have to understand the context that you work, the area, the sector, your statistics, etc. So maybe if it's to pull up like information, can AI give me statistics on such and such? But I know it can be exhausting, and maybe AI could have helped me 5 years ago, but the
But they
training.
can help you with the proofreading. And you talked about proofreading and editing. So like,
So Grammarly, I use Grammarly.
yeah.
That's A1. What else? I wish there was a grant AI software, but there isn't. At least I haven't discovered yet. Because it is time consuming. But I think, like I mentioned, you have to, AI cannot customize an idea.
No, they can.
So
Yeah.
that is the key thing with proposal writing. So those are like one of the main areas I mean software.
Okay. And then the third gem you dropped is you said that most of the proposals, record proposals ask for similar stuff. So is it that for your organization, do you keep like a set background document, a set material that you know that you're going to use this to drop in to describe your organization, use this to describe this part of these sections? Do you have, or when you're doing your project rational, do you have a folder on your system where you have all your academic papers, your newspapers clippings, something like that to help you with your prep work?
So unintentionally, I do. I like to do a lot of research and look for documents online. So whenever I find something with a theme that we're focused on, like literature, I always download it and share with my colleagues. But sometimes what I find helpful is really, and the donors at least also ask for that, they ask, have you previously worked on a project in this area? Are you building off of that project? I can use previous projects and I can mention PFLI that we were able to execute this mentorship program. We showed these results. So I can, use that as well for future funding. So we do, well, I at least definitely use literature based on thematic areas. But I also too build off of existing proposals that I have done, not duplicating it, but saying we've carried it out previously, and we're just building off of it.
Right. So all I'm getting from this is that the prep work is just as important as the actual writing. So if we go through and we try to recap the amount of gems you have given us tonight. We talk about the first step is to research the donors. Research to ensure there is alignment with the vision and mission of the donor and our organization. Research to see what are the past projects that they have supported and if it's similar to a project that you want to support. We talked about research again in talking to who our beneficiaries are and what are their needs and trying not to use persons just to gather information, but ensure that there's an equal exchange of information and respect and ethical conduct when we're talking to beneficiaries and when we're talking to potential partners as well. That we're not just grabbing to move up the ladder, but instead that we're bringing everyone up with us. Then we talked about research when it talks about the academic research and the journals and the newspapers about how we're going to build to say that this is a social problem. There's a lot of stuff in this prep week. And in order to do all of these things in a timely manner, we also need to ensure that we have like a calendar of some form or some form of time management system that allows us to be like, okay, we know that we spend this amount of time to research these three aspects. Do we have enough time before the deadline to execute all these things and then write? So a lot of research, a lot of ensuring that we know what's happening to be able to speak on behalf of our beneficiaries. And then we talked a bit about what software is available to assist us in this process. Oh, we talked about partnerships. Yes. So we talked about the fact that we might not always be able to have co-applicants on our hunt for grants for funds, but it's good to ensure that we know that we have a network that we can depend on for information, and that if we do want to do applicants for grants, that we could plan ahead for that as well. A lot of planning ahead. Resource mobilization does not happen overnight. It is not, there's no magic pill to it. I think Chelsea alluded to that earlier when she was saying you have to be strategic about it. And then also you have to manage it in the end. So we talked about all those things. But do you have any last words of encouragement? Because we know that proposal writing, whether it is two pages or 50 pages, it could try to take your sanity.
Yeah.
So do you have any final words of advice for those who write proposals?
I do have a few tips that I want to share. And just to preface by saying that I'm coming from a grassroots perspective. I started off really small. I'm not an expert proposal writer, but these are just some of the things that I've learned in the process of doing this in the past 10 years. So the first one is definitely get help. Have someone look over your work. If you've never done something like this before, someone with the expertise, not just a colleague, but someone with the expertise, have them look over it to give you recommendations. Do that. Find a mentor, find any random person. Just get someone to look over if you're doing something for the first time. The second one is training. I mentioned in the beginning that one of the first set of skills I learned coming into this space was how to write a proposal, how to write a concept note. And I still go back to the information from that very first proposal. And if you can find online training courses, I've actually done one with CPDC, which Karen was a part of previously. So find communities, find scholarship opportunities that will fund training where you learn the skills. So definitely do that. Work with a team to brainstorm. You might have a great idea, but really bouncing off suggestions with other people really goes a long way. Don't be intimidated by a concept note or proposal. Just do what you can and put your best foot forward. Um, Karen mentioned it previously. Do your research in terms of how to even structure your proposals, the research on the topic that you're working in, and even review the guidelines which some donors present in terms of how they actually evaluate your proposal. Look at that, grade yourself, and make sure that you know you meet that criteria. Um, Also, we didn't mention it, but don't underestimate the I guess the power of good governance. A lot of the times, even when I look at proposals, the first thing I look at is what are they asking of me to submit? Do I need audited documents, which I know maybe I don't have for the past year? Do I need to have a board that is made up of such and such? Do I need to be part of this network? We touched on those guidelines, but also your governance is extremely important because you don't want that when it's time to get the money, you don't even have a bank account, you don't have a bank account in your name, you don't have proper financial procedures, etc. So ensure that your organization is really set from the get-go. You may be doing this for 2 months, for 5 months. Just ensure that these are the basic things, that you're really running a proper organization and you have the proper organizational structure to meet some of these donor requests. I know now in the landscape that we're in, a lot of donors are becoming a little bit more flexible. So they may not request like certain registration documents, etc. But those things can be valuable in the long run, right? Whether you want to be a legally registered organization or just a community-based organization that's registered with your ministry, always look at the criteria and what the donors, are requesting that you submit when it's time to apply. And don't underestimate to your work. We will still a small organization that really started operating out of a community center, and just being able to build off of your work, just continuing to grow, and don't be afraid to think big. It's definitely the route that I would take. Sometimes you're the only organization doing the work that you do, and your proposal is what's really needed in the sector. So just don't think that you are too small to submit a proposal. Just make sure that you have the skills to translate what your needs are for your organization and your beneficiaries, and that you can really tailor it to, I guess, what the donors are requesting. So for me, a lot of the proposals that we've had have not come out of the request, but have come out of the meetings that we've had prior to that, and an opportunity comes up for funding. Literally, it's like, okay, we've been talking about child protection, we now have an opportunity to fund our work. So I think that's the main thing, always having ideas ready in the vault, so when an opportunity pops up, that proposal and project management component is just easy for you, for sure. So I think always that is really critical for us, because I think, and I hope I'm not going off on a
No,
tangent.
no, no. I'm
I
very important information.
I think just now there will be opportunities that come up, and you pass them up, so you don't apply because this is not the direction I want to go with my organization. Even though you check off every aspect of what they're requesting, I don't want to spend the next year doing this. This is where our organization is going. So you will have to sometimes pass up opportunities if you really
Mhm.
are working towards a specific goal. So I know sometimes we really need the financing and we really want to do a lot. Maybe that's your thing, you just work on a project basis. But if your organization is working, let's say, on abortion, um, I'm not going to go and do something on climate change at the moment because I really want to prioritize this issue. Um, Maybe we have to look at alternative routes for funding. So I think for us to, I don't want to overwork the team or go astray in terms of an area that we're not really
Mhm.
prioritizing just for the sake of doing it. But in the early stages, sometimes you want the experience, and that's great. Maybe you're still trying to flesh out, okay, what is our focus? What do we want to do? That can happen sometimes, and that's great. But we've passed up opportunities as well and said, we really want to focus on this. And while the funding would be great, we just know that burnout is real and we're a small organization. So we're going to give the organization an opportunity and let's stick to this. So that's very, very important in the long run if, when you more opportunities start coming up.
Yes. Yes, and you're just reconfirming everything that your alignment determines your assignments, that we don't underestimate the value of prep work and planning. And I mean, it's so easy to be caught up busy in the doing that we forget to plan. And you talk all about planning and putting down. And the same way our time is buy the Christmas curtains and put them down from September. We need to put down our proposals from way before even the deadline comes out, and having conversations. One of the most critical things about fundraising, whether it be proposal writing, whether it be um, fundraising activities, galas, and stuff like that, is that people give to people. And remembering that donors are people. So therefore, if you go to the meeting and you connect with them, follow up to see if there's a potential for funding, or they may follow up to see if there's a potential for further partnership.
Yeah.
So you've covered so much, and I'm so grateful for all these tips, the importance of research and the different types of research that has to be done to go into to proposals. The one that we didn't touch on is, but I mean, is budget, right? You need to research to ensure that that the budget fits your project. Because sometimes donors, we have this new thing about micro grants, and with the 500 US, what 500 US may do in other countries in the Caribbean region, our wonderful mighty region, it may not stretch as far. So to ensure that the budgets align with what our goals are as well, that's another place that we need to ensure that there's alignment, and then make sure that we are in alignment with our beneficiaries, make sure that we're in alignment with our partners and those who work in the region as well.
Yeah.
Um, so thank you so much for your time and your expertise, your 10 years of experience that you're calling small. It's been incredibly informative. And if you want to learn more about either the work that Charity is doing, you could follow her at Girls of a Father St. Lucia, and you could contact her, or you could contact me, Karen at Kainos, to learn more about resource mobilization and how it impacts your organizational management. Look forward to chatting with you all again next month on the second Thursday of the month. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Have a great afternoon, evening.
You,
Bye.
Karen, everyone. Bye bye.